From dusty detention camps in northeastern Syria to the halls of power in Canberra, a failed escape attempt has reignited a global debate over security, responsibility, and human rights, as dozens of Australian women and children remain stranded after trying to leave an ISIS-linked camp. Australia's government is drawing a firm line. But when national security collides with humanitarian obligation, where should responsibility truly begin and end? As we dive into the details, all these and more will be explored in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Thabito Alco. Let's begin. Welcome back, and now I'm bringing you updates all the way from Iran. In Iran, the United States and Iran are holding indirect talks in Geneva on Tuesday in an effort to revive stalled negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program, as Washington reinforces its military presence in the region and warns of possible escalation. The talks, mediated by Oman, come with little public indication of a breakthrough. U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are participating alongside Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, according to a source briefed on the discussions. The United States President Donald Trump said he would be involved indirectly and suggested Iran may be open to an agreement, while also warning of consequences if diplomacy fails. He cited previous military actions against Iranian nuclear facilities as evidence of Washington's willingness to act. President Trump has constantly spoken about Iran and their nuclear enrichment. He has made a recent statement. Let's watch.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. It's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could add a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential. We had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
Negotiations had been on the way last June when Israel launched airstrikes against Iran, later joined by US B-2 bombers targeting nuclear sites. Tehran later said it halted uranium enrichment. The Western powers remain skeptical about that statement. U.S. officials say the military is preparing for the possibility of weeks-long operations against Iran should President Trump authorize action. Meanwhile, we'll take a look at Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Just recently in the week, he met with Trump in Washington on Wednesday, saying any agreement with Iran must address Israel's security concerns. Let's watch.
Skepticism of any deal with Iran because, frankly, Iran is reliable on one thing. They lie and they cheat. But I said that if a deal is to be reached, it should have several components that we believe are important not only for the security of Israel, but for the security of the world. There shall be no enrichment capability, not stopping the enrichment process, but dismantle the equipment and the infrastructure that allows you to enrich in the first place. We dismantled about 150 kilometers of 500 kilometers of tunnels. We have to complete the job. That means also that you can't hide weapons labs or other facilities that they use to rearm themselves, regroup and reform, which they're trying to do.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu, right, just speaking about Iran, that's a stick right there, but we wouldn't know. Over to still Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, looking at the tensions rising in the world and especially in Europe. He also spoke about Jewish response to the rise of anti-Semitism and implores them as Jewish people to fight back. Let's watch.
In Europe, in the United States, everywhere. I say to you in front of these vilifications, do not cower, do not bend. Do not bow your head. Fight back, because people respect those who respect themselves. And the minorities that fought back, whether it's the blacks or the gays or women, they fought back. And what we have to do as Jews, both here in Israel and in the various Jewish communities around the world, beginning with the United States, is to fight back. Silence will not help. Looking askance will not help. Fight back. That's what I tell you. That's what I tell young Jewish students that I meet. I'm very proud of them. When I meet them, I see that they have this inner fire, but it must be a policy. We fight back. There's going to be a media war. There's a digital war. Yes, I know all of that. And we're going to fight it together. But the most important thing is that you are willing. God, I hate to borrow this phrase. Fight, fight, fight. You have to fight back. The first requirement to defeat anti-Semitism is to fight anti-Semitism. It's the only way. There's no other way. We do so, obviously, on the battlefield and the physical manifestations of those who want to slaughter us, and we're very successful in. But we have to do it on the information level or the disinformation level as well. And I guarantee you that if we do so, the Jewish future, as you see in this remarkable state,
I mean, probably the best words from a leader to his people. Meanwhile, we'll look at Iran. Iran has launched naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil transit route as Gulf Arab states urge restraint and diplomacy. While Washington, on the other hand, and Tehran resumed negotiations on February 6th, reopening a decade-old dispute over Iran's nuclear ambitions. The United States and Israel believe Iran is seeking the capability to develop a nuclear weapon, a claim Tehran denies, insisting its program is for peaceful purposes. However, Iran has enriched uranium well beyond levels required for civilian energy use, approaching weapons-grade thresholds. Iran's leadership has faced mounting pressure since last year's airstrikes, compounded by widespread anti-government protests and a deepening economic crisis driven by sanctions that have curtailed oil revenues. Unlike earlier negotiations, the United States has now deployed what President Trump has described as a substantial naval force to the region. Washington is also pushing to broaden the talks to include Iran's missile program, a proposal Tehran has rejected, saying discussions must focus strictly on nuclear limits in exchange for sanctions relief. Now, we'll see that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Monday in an interview that reaching an agreement with Iran would be difficult, but confirmed that Washington remains willing to pursue. Let's watch.
I'm not going to talk about attacks on Iran or anything of that nature because the president's made clear he prefers diplomacy and an outcome of negotiated settlement. Now, we're dealing with radical Shia clerics. Okay, we're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also met International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi in Geneva to discuss technical cooperation and oversight issues linked to the negotiations. Later on Tuesday, Witkoff and Kushner are expected to join separate three-way talks with Russia and Ukraine as Washington continues efforts to push for an end to Moscow's 4-year war in Ukraine. Now, that's just a chip-in coming over from us to you concerning the Russia and Ukraine war. Now, over to Australia and what is happening right there concerning repatriation. Australia has refused to repatriate its citizens linked to the Islamic State group following a failed attempt by several families to leave a detention camp in Syria. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese told national broadcaster ABC that the government would not bring the group home, stating that those who traveled overseas to support ISIS would not receive government assistance to return. But this is coming from a leader. Let's watch.
These issues, but we are not repatriating, or we monitor all of these issues, but we are not repatriating these people.
How will you seek to stop them from coming to Australia then?
Well, we're not repatriating them. Will
you use, for example, the opposition's suggestion of a temporary exclusion order?
Well, what we will do.
His remarks came after reports that 34 Australian women and children were stopped by Syrian authorities after leaving the Al-Roj detention camp in northeastern Syria. The group had reportedly planned to travel to Damascus as part of efforts to return to Australia, but were informed that their departure procedures were incomplete and they could not proceed. According to the Associated Press, the 11 families were attempting to depart the camp when Syrian officials intervened. Hakmiye Ibrahim, director of Al-Roj camp, said the effort was organized by relatives who had traveled from Australia to assist them. It remains unclear whether the families will be allowed to attempt the journey again. The Australian government reiterated its positions in a statement, confirming it is not and will not repatriate people from Syria. Officials added that security agencies continue to monitor development and warned that any returning citizen who has committed crimes would face prosecution under Australian law. Thousands of foreign nationals, many of them women and children, have remained in Syrian detention camps since the collapse of ISIS' so-called caliphate more than 5 years ago. Human rights groups, including Amnesty International, have raised concerns about conditions in the camps, citing allegations of abuse, gender-based violence, and arbitrary detention. The Al-Roj camp also houses high-profile detainees, including Shamima Begum, who left the United Kingdom as a teenager in 2015 to join ISIS and was later stripped of her British citizenship. Australia previously repatriated groups of women and children from Syrian camps in 2019 and 2022. However, the government has since hardened its stance. In 2023, the Save the Children Australia unsuccessfully sought a court order compelling the federal government to bring Australian citizens home. The fall of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in 2024 has added further uncertainty to the region. Syria's new leadership has reportedly moved to displace Kurdish-led forces from parts of northern Syria, including areas where detention camps are located. Earlier this week, United Nations experts urged more than 50 countries to urgently repatriate and reintegrate their detained nationals in accordance with international law. Separately, the United States announced the transfer of more than 5,700 adult male ISIS fighters from Syrian detention facilities to Iraq's custody, a move that United Nations experts previously criticized over due process concerns. Now we see that pressures continues to mount on Western government as debates intensify over national security, legal responsibility, and humanitarian obligations. This is coming right here from Australia and the issue of repatriation. Now moving over to a development that broke over the internet and seems to be like a victory speech. The United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has urged European governments to align more closely with Washington to build what he described as a new Western century, framing transatlantic ties as a shared civilizational project. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Rubio said the United States and Europe belong to a single Western civilization and should deepen cooperation beyond defense, extending into technology, industry, and global influence. His remarks follow more than a year of rhetoric from President Donald Trump and senior officials criticizing Europe's liberal policies on migration, climate, and governance. Let's watch.
Do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance is the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children.
Marco Rubio also argued that post-Cold War optimism had led Western countries to underestimate threats to social cohesion and economic strength. He called for